if I could just introduce myself, and Henry and Nicolette can introduce themselves. So I'm Andy Chapman. I'm a director for the Economy for the Common Good in the UK. We are one of the partner organisations that have been working with PEP on the Festival for Change. Henry and Nicolette, would you like to say hi?
Hi, my name's Henry Lusengaw. I'm the founder and CEO of Promoting Economic Pluralism that started up the Festival for Change. I've also actually visited Johannesburg and been shown around by a couple of people who live there, one of whom was an actor and star on South African TV, who we met in a restaurant. So yeah. We were taken to lots of interesting places.
Great, thanks, Henry. Nicola?
I can't say anything as interesting as that, but I am a trustee of Promoting Economic Pluralism and a mentor at the incredibly exciting Festival for Change.
Great, thank you. So I'm sorry I kind of interrupted your flow, Zoda, because you were just getting beautifully into it, and in a moment
problem.
I'll pick up from where you left off. Just to say, we've got half an hour today, and so yeah, we'd love to hear from you in about 5 minutes, over 5 minutes or so, about the project and how it's set up and how it's going to be working and what you hope to achieve with it. Then we've got some questions that we'd like to ask you about it. So that's the kind of general structure for the session, and then we hope that kind of by the end of the week or thereabouts that we'll be able to get back to you with information about whether the project is going forward to the final. Yeah. But just we should say to begin with, congratulations for getting this far, because it's great that you are at this stage. So do please tell us all about Pedal-preneurs.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. All right, so Pedal-preneurs, it provides our informal workers in our communities with a bicycle as well as training, and to ensure that they are covered should anything happen. So now the main problem that we have was that with the lockdown for COVID-19, the informal sector was not cared for. A lot of people who have businesses, and these are big businesses that had emergency funds, were closed down, but they were able to receive some kind of relief from the government because they had paperwork that they could present. Our informal workers, on the other hand, not only don't have the business understanding, but they were forced to stay at home with their goods and services and not able to make an income, which put many of them into an immediate state of poverty. So we already have a system in our communities where informal workers go from door to door selling their goods and services. We already have people with vegetable trolleys roaming around the different streets. There's a system that's in place, but it's a very informal system. And I think one of the things that the government was concerned about with the COVID-19 outbreak is that they didn't have the right food safety and hygiene training to go from door to door selling food. So that's how we came about with Pedal-preneurs. So with this bicycle, the entrepreneur gets the bicycle that has a stand in front of it, allowing them to put all of their goods, and some of them are maybe plumbers and electricians, so they can put all of their tools in there, and they can go from house to house selling their goods and services with the right training to ensure that they're not just making an income, but they're also improving their business and getting better and better. And they're backed by a company, all of them getting the same branded bicycle, all of them being registered, all of them being trained accordingly as to how to do business, considering in those safety and hygiene measurements, and making sure that even though we might go through another lockdown in the future, they can still operate and provide people goods and services at home in a way that is good for them. So one of the things that we also took into consideration is to how this affects the environment. And environmentally speaking, although there's a lot of apps where people can order food from restaurants, and that's a big trend at the moment, but a lot of these places come with packaging that only adds to the problem of pollution. And not only that, many people in villages and townships like ours don't have the money to order from these restaurants on these apps, or maybe even the data costs. So with this particular bicycle, you don't need to have an app. You don't even have to have a phone. There's an hourly schedule where they roam around providing vegetables on this hour, this particular good on this hour. And each and every household within a specific location has a crate of their own, as well as a time schedule that is given to them beforehand. And with this, say for instance, if the vegetable man comes around, you can go to your gate with your crate and you can pick the vegetables you need. No packaging required, so no pollution to the environment, as well as no fuel emission from going around with a scooter. It's just a man on a bicycle selling these goods and services. But we didn't just want to give these bicycles to one particular person. We wanted it to be a family-owned bicycle. So unfortunately, a lot of these households are headed by one father who's the only person working, and then maybe having children and a wife who are not working at home. So now what happens if something happens to the father, who's the main breadwinner of the family? Everybody goes into poverty if he can't work or if he's no longer around. So if you give this bicycle to the family, everybody in the family can maybe even take turns if it has a son or a daughter who can roam around at different hours. And also it provides them with a backing from a company where they are insured, and they also pay taxes, and they can earn from the government should they be forced to stay at home. They also have things like life insurance and medical aid, which will ensure that they are covered no matter what happens. And then another thing that we were looking to approach was, in order to make an income, was to have these medical aid companies as well as insurance companies to also maybe advertise on some of these bicycles. That's another way that we'll be making revenue for them. And our advertising team will ensure that we are advertising to all of the households within those neighborhoods so that these people are making an income. So just to explain to you the business model of it and how Pedal-preneurs on its own will be generating an income while empowering informal workers. So it works in a similar system that is like Uber and Deliveroo, where you provide the entrepreneur with everything that they need, and they have weekly targets to meet, as well as a commission that they give back to the business. So that's how the business is going to be operating. And we're still in the process of looking at different designs for bike, making sure that the bikes are good for the weather that we have in our area, as well as the type of roads that we have in different villages and townships, as well as making sure that we don't use materials that are also bad for the environment, but also something that is strong enough for the bicycle to last up to 5 years or more, as well as stations where the different bikepreneurs can go in case they need some helping with their bicycles, and things like having a small medical kit on the bicycle just in case anything happens. And we're going to be working with the community for them to also help us ensure that these things go according to plan. One of the questions that we were thinking about was safety. So the safety of the riders as they go around the different neighborhoods. At the moment, we do have a system of people who are going around. So for safety, we wanted to put on a tracker onto the bicycle, very small, and put it in a hidden place so that each bicycle is tracked accordingly. This will also help us make sure that there are always bikes on the road, ensuring that the locals have their goods and services provided to them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so do I still have time?
Yeah, we've got some time. We've got some questions we'd like to ask if we may. I'll just start with one. So it sounds like you've got quite a significant amount of startup cost, I would imagine, for this, in terms of buying bicycles, buying the bits for the baskets or stands that are going to go on them, you know, getting them kind of branded up with the Pedal-preneur branding and all of that. Do you have the kind of working capital in place already to do that, or are you looking for funding at the moment to help you do that?
We're still seeking funding at the moment, so we don't have the capital at the moment, not at all.
Okay.
We're still seeking funding.
Okay, thank you. Henry, what would you like to ask? You're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, this sounds I think a very creative and timely idea. I'm just interested in your parallels with Deliveroo and Uber and so forth. And one of the big issues with those models is the rights of the bikers or the deliverers or whatever. And firstly, what their status is in terms of whether they're a contractor or an employee. Secondly, what say they have in the governance of the organization, because this model can be obviously highly exploitative in terms of try to minimize the amount of payments, and particularly obviously you're dealing with a lot of vulnerable people who are probably desperate. And there's quite a lot of thinking going on around about models that give more say, obviously cooperatives are the sort of thing, but so that your members could be members are more, have more some sort of ownership or some sort of rights or place beyond just being a sort of contractor who can come and go and a sort of commodity, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in our case, what we feel makes this one a little bit different is the fact that the entrepreneurs are not just coming onto the platform as a contractor. We're giving them a sense of security by making sure that they are registered and insured and can operate under a brand that can legally back them against anything else. So the big issue is that although it's exploitative in the sense that the contractor can eventually go and branch off by their own, but then they won't have things that are making sure that their family is taken care of should they not be able to, which is one of the biggest problems that we have in our different African communities, the fact that people rely on hand-to-mouth income on a daily basis, but they don't have any future proofing, which is why we have this constant cycle of people going to and from poverty. So in an attempt to end that cycle, we're providing them with something that they can't do on their own and something that they can't easily just decide to go and replicate on their own. This is something that is going to back them and ensure that they not only taking care of themselves by making daily income, but taking care of their future and their children.
But so the answer to my question is a no, is it? That they're not going to have any membership or rights or vote about in the running of the organization? Yes. Why not, out of interest?
Because we want to make it something that is, for the beginning, that is something that we maybe draft down and have them joining onto the platform, and then in future as we evolve we'll be able to handle that kind of engagement. But I think at the beginning it's just something that we haven't prepared for at the moment, but it's definitely something that we can look into and add on to our current plan.
Because one of the biggest issues with, I suppose, the failure of the current economic system is the inequality between the rights of shareholders and the rights of other parties. And there are some interesting structures that you could look at where you can have different classes of shares to different stakeholders. So you could give all your entrepreneurs a class of share that gives them a say, while giving a different class of share to impact investors, to founders and so on. So you had a more equitable decision making, and that would also mean that your contractors would feel they probably had more ownership and more belonging, you know, that you'd probably get more loyalty because they would feel they were having a say in how the company was run, its future strategy. So it could give you huge benefits as well.
All right, I'm just making a note of that as well. It's definitely something that I'll share with my team and we'll take into consideration as we continue to improve the idea.
We can, I could send you some references. There's a colleague of mine who I'm sure would love to talk to you, who's actually originally born in South Africa, who has developed this model called A Company for the Free. And he's he is an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur as well. And I'll link him up with, because he'd love to, given he was born in, I think, St. Elizabeth, Port Elizabeth, or somewhere like that.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Thanks, Henry. Nicolette, can I bring you in? What would you like to ask Sodwa?
I want to sort of explore a little bit more what the demand is for this mode of transport. And obviously in the pandemic, there's a clear need for it, but once we get over this particular crisis, are you vulnerable to either the demand dropping off or competition from another means of transport, or how might you respond to those sorts of scenarios?
So at the moment, the current possible competition we're looking at is, of course, the app ordering, which is on people's cell phones, ordering groceries and food from different restaurants. However, considering the kind of areas that we're looking to implement this, which is villages and townships, there isn't at the moment anybody who is doing it in a formal way to have these bicycles roaming around or having a system in place. So as for the future after the COVID-19, people are still going to need goods and services delivered at home. Just like before COVID-19, people in our areas were delivering these goods and services to different homes, but of course in an informal way. So not only is this good for how COVID-19 has impacted people, not only is it a good solution from COVID-19, but it's also something that's only going to get better and better as we ease outside of COVID-19. And another differentiating factor is the fact that it's something that is trying to promote people from using less fuel emission ways of transport, like scooters. So a lot of deliveries are done on scooters, which means that the person who's riding the scooter has to pay things like fuel. And this is less of a cost for the person who's riding. So it's cost efficient as well.
No, it's a very...
I'm sorry, Nicolette.
I was just gonna say, it's a very attractive model in terms of it's reducing environmental impact, it's building the local collaboration and resilience.
Thank you so much, Nicola.
I'm just remembering what I was going to ask you. It's just slipped from my mind. It was a great question as well. But I was going to ask you, so in terms of the timing of the project, you say, you're currently looking for the funding to, how are you hoping to start? Are you hoping to start with, say, 1 or 2 bicycles and kind of build it organically? Or are you hoping to start, is there a minimum critical mass of bikes that you need to have to start it to make it work?
So we wanted to start with 10 bicycles because in our set neighborhood, we already have 4 guys who are roaming around with trolleys for vegetables. We have another 2 guys that sell handcrafted things. Another 2 guys, one does plumbing and the other one does electricity. So we wanted to look at the people that we already have who are already doing this and provide them with these bicycles as well as the system that is going to help them, and then from there that the business could make its own funds to continue to buy more and more bikes and expand from one neighborhood to another.
Okay. Yes, Henry, sorry.
I was just wondering, I may have missed this, but have you also thought of a way to try and connect the business to the community that you're operating? So I imagine you'll have different communities with different bike pedal entrepreneurs in those different communities. Whether you thought of ways to try and get, again, buy-in, ownership, involvement of the wider communities, because that might again help create a loyal customer base, because again they felt some ownership, some involvement, and you would get also a sort of way of getting feedback. What people wanted. You'd have sort of active customers say, saying, well, can you have a bike that brings this or has a different time or whatever?
So that is something that we actually haven't taken into consideration, which is having people have ownership and the ability to then constantly give us that feedback. So that's another thing that I'm going to present to my team, and then we'll be able to include that in our plan. It's something that we actually haven't touched on at the moment. I think our main idea was just to provide the bicycle at the moment and then have that, but the business model could change as we factor in these kind of considerations.
And you could have a subscription model as well, that people give us a subscription to be a member and get a discount or something like that. So again, you're getting a more regular income from subscribers in the community, which is, gives you a more secure income, again, a sort of building a longer term relationship. So you could have a sort of membership model, which could be quite interesting, and giving more, again, community ownership. I've just remembered the name of the guy I'm going to connect you with, Graham Boyd. And again, the sort of model that he's working on, actually, that we're looking at as well, applying in different places, allows you to have, if you like, different classes of members who have a legal say in an organization. So you could have community members, you could have Pedal-preneur members, and they're all then represented. So you're building this sort of collective involvement, ownership. And that really helps protect your longer term viability as well, because you're creating a level of loyalty, belonging, it's not just any old bike that's coming by, it's their community bike.
Okay, excellent. The community element of having the community involved into the business is something that we haven't touched on yet. I think it's because it's not too familiar in our societies just as yet. But like you said, it is something that can get the community feeling a lot more involved, and then give us even longer, a chance of staying in the economy even longer. So it's something that I'm going to add to the consideration of the business model.
Thanks so much. Nicolette?
Yes, I wanted to sort of elaborate on what Henry was saying about the need to build the community support and the trust and the thing. As you're starting from scratch, we've just sort of for how many, 10 bikes, I think you said. You've obviously got to establish reputation, because one of the drivers for success in this is the fact that you do have a safe, regular service, and you don't want any bad incidents on health and safety, so that you lose that reputation. Getting your community involved, whether it's via ownership or this sort of all being stakeholders in it in some way, helps build that trust, and makes the actual whole model more resilient. So I think what I'm saying, not so much a question, is do look at doing that.
Yes, so what we wanted to do was to start off by giving the reputation of the business itself as a brand that is then branded as something that is safe in terms of the hygiene standards that it takes before. Sorry, just a second. Mom, I'm taking it on then. So, sorry, that was my mom. So the hygiene standards that are taken before, I think if these bicycles are branded under a brand that the people can trust, then the people are more likely to buy from them and want to support the riders that go around. So that was what we were looking at the moment in terms of gaining trust from the locals, as well as getting them feeling like this is a business that is benefiting them. So that's what we were looking at the moment. But like you said, a little bit more community involvement is something that we need to take more and more consideration of and adding into our business model.
Yeah, and another question I had is, have you already established a reputation with the, say, the local government or whoever it is who's providing assurance that you do meet health and safety standards?
No, we have not at the moment. So we're still in very early idea phase. I think this is just something that we've been working on for about a month or so. So we haven't really gone as far as approaching anybody else. This is actually the first platform that we're able to present the idea on And the Festival of Change was the only place that we had actually put the idea through to at the moment. Yeah,
which is fine. We want to develop ideas as well.
Okay. Is there anything else that we haven't yet touched on that we need to? We've got a couple of minutes left in our half hour. If not, then I'll just say thank you very much, Zodra. Lovely to meet you. Really interesting to hear about the project. It sounds great, I have to say. If you ever get to the point of having a crowdfunder to raise capital for it, let me know, because I would be interested in contributing to that. So yeah, and we'll be in touch in a few days' time, and best of luck with it.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Great stuff.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.